Hey, what's up guys? Little man with a big opinion here. Today's video is going to be a simple one. I think it is something that not just preppers, but a lot of people are dealing with. Uh, I think the title I'm going to go with is Prepping is Hard Right Now. Uh, I could very easily dump a video out every single day talking about what's going on in the news, how you can prepare for the different things you see going on. And, that would basically make this a news video or a news channel. The prepping stuff is hard right now because, the economy is hard right now. It's difficult to, the kind of system that I want to have for these videos is, yes, a news video would be nice every day, helping keep y'all informed. But I also want to make a video talking about this new prep item that I bought that's going to help out, in this form or fashion, whether it falls into the security side where I'm talking about, guns or ammo or magazines that were bought, or it's going into the sustainment side where I'm talking about, food that was bought or water storage or, what we're doing to help us survive in a grid down situation. But the reality of it is everything is more expensive and wages aren't going up nearly fast enough to, meet that. What I was able to purchase prepping wise a year ago is loads more than what I can do now versus what I could do 4 years ago versus what I was doing when I first started college. Me, my brother, and my uncle were able to go out and, get some shooting in, and to prepare for us to go out and shoot, I bought one $40 AR-500 steel target. My brother bought the other one, and we had a bunch of paper targets and half a box of clay pigeons, and then a whole ton of empty glass bottles that my grandma wanted us to get rid of. But, we did this at the end of September, and I was able to spend $40 on a target, and that was about it for prepping. It'd be very, very nice to be able to, hey, we got this X number of rounds and we put this much food aside and did this thing or did that thing. But economic wise, it's just not happening. I'm still working out constantly, but there's no point in making a video saying I did 4 800-meter runs on the treadmill, or that I put my kid in his hiking backpack and carried him around for a mile and a half. Those are things that I've talked about before. They don't really warrant a video. You're not really gaining any new information out of it. So you really do need to budget. Knowing exactly what all of your bills and expenses are is really important, because it can then help you decide, what of this money goes into savings, what of this money goes into, preps, what goes into retirement. And like yesterday, I had to get 2 new tires for the car, and also the tire sensor was out, and we spent like $485 to do that. Had the savings for it, but planning on prepping stuff, it definitely dug into the prepping budget for October, which was not quite non-existent, but you almost want to go ahead and hold on to that money just in case something random like that pops up. So it's definitely important to have some sort of cash savings for when the random stuff like that pops up. That way you're not, having to put it on a credit card, or like I thought it was wild that at Discount Tires they have payment plans for tires. Um, that's not something that I would have, you know, put on the list of having a payment plan for, but they exist. So, what are other things that you can do prepping wise to just kind of, you know, keep yourself in that mindset? One of the things that I've been doing is I have collected a lot of books. My grandma, if it's anything history or military that she can get at a thrift store or anything like that, she basically goes out and gets it. So the one I've been reading right now is The Fighters. It's talking about Americans in combat in Afghanistan and Iraq. And it's a pretty good book so far. I like that the author of this book, it has several parts. This first part comes from a lieutenant, sergeant first class, hospital corpsman, specialist, chief warrant officer, a lieutenant commander, lieutenant, a sergeant. So you get a pretty diversified view from at least now I'm drawing a blank. It was either 26th or the 27th Infantry Division that this book covers. And, it covers their time over there. And, the little bit that I'll talk about is from the chapter about one of the specialists, talking about how even in a war, a lot of their time was just kind of spent sitting around in an outpost, just having a presence there. That he said in their company's entire time at this outpost, they dealt with maybe 50 enemy combatants, and they had about 5 confirmed engagements and only 2 confirmed, killed on the enemy side. This is one of those books that, you can only learn so much through the internet and reading before you need to, implement the skills that you're picking up. But it's one I would definitely put on your list to read because it helps out. They explain, at least in the specialist chapter, he explains pretty well in detail setting up an ambush. And that's a prepping skill that I think every prepper should have, and hopefully you never have to implement it. And you might not even have a mag that is large enough to, implement a ambush, at least to American military standards. But that can be your one bit of information from this video, and that is you always want to have a 3-to-1 advantage when you get in any sort of, fight. If you're doing a hasty ambush, in some instances they drop that down to 2, just because the element of surprise counteracts not having that 3-to-1 advantage. But on the prepping side of things, something that you also need to keep in mind is you are also your logistics, you're also your medical evacuation, you are your own intel, you're your own reconnaissance, And typically, you are also your own QRF, or quick reaction force. So, learning the skill is great. Implementing it, you know, I've seen it kind of work at doing airsoft events where you can kind of implement it, and you know, doing it in my time in the army, we used paintball guns, and that helps out a little bit. But that's one of those things that you go through, you work it out with your whole group, you figure out how you're going to, run through the scenario. But like he says in the book, they got a fresh lieutenant. He had just finished Ranger School, so he was, a little bit better prepared than others. And he had also done some sort of, green to gold. He was a staff sergeant. And their very first firefight, it went, textbook perfect. And then their second one didn't quite go so textbook perfect. And there was a brief, he says it was maybe 3 minutes where things kind of fell apart. And it was almost like the lieutenant reverted back to what he would have done as a staff sergeant versus what he would have done as a lieutenant. So even if you learn the skills, you practice the skills, you're never really going to know how good or bad you are at that skill until you actually have to use that skill. So something to keep in mind as you're doing your prepping stuff, and that goes for all the skills that you learn. It reminds me of Jack London's book where, building a fire, and, the guy had spent his entire life in the backwoods, hunting, fishing, camping, doing all this stuff to sustain himself. And he had built probably hundreds, if not thousands, of fires. And he had one really bad situation where, he ends up dying from it. And so, even if you are also good at something, you should also continue to practice it. So, on the lower, less impactful side, you need to continue to work out. You need to continue to pay attention to the news and what's going on. If you're in a situation where you can afford to, go to a range every other week, then, keep up with that. Don't just drop the ball on it. If you, go camping and do bushcraft stuff, even if it's simple skills, you still are making yourself a better prepper by, you've done it dozens of times, lighting a campfire with one match. Don't just, well, I know how to do that, so I'm just gonna, use a lighter and lighter fluid. Keep working on that skill. If you feel like you've mastered it enough, go to the next harder version where you're doing it with a ferrocerium rod. Get to the point where you can light the fire with, a stick and a piece of wood or a magnifying glass. Don't let up on your preps as much as you can. Hopefully here in the next few months, like the one thing economically that really sucks is, our electric bill, our electricity uses has stayed about the same for the last 3 or 4 years. And going back in the history, seeing that this month's electric bill was $65 higher than it was last year for roughly doing the same thing. Matter of fact, I think we have gone from, keeping the thermostat at a certain temperature and raising it up a degree. definitely as it cools off, it gets better because we just turn the AC off, and that will allow us to set a little bit more aside and, hopefully start buying more preps. But I also think it's a boring video to show you a list of things that I want to purchase. Um, there's things as a prepper that are a higher priority, and they'll get purchased in due time. And then there's things as a prepper that it's like, yes, I'd love to buy another gun because I'm American and it's part of our DNA. And then there's just other things outside of prepping that you know it'd be nice to purchase because it makes life easier, or makes things more simple and has nothing to do with prepping, but the income is not there. So hang in there. Hopefully things will start improving. Not really going to make it a political video, but maybe a change in the current administration might make things better. We'll see how that works out, and if things don't change, then I would expect stuff to continue to go downhill and get worse. So if you've got the income to prep, you've worked it out in your budget, I think I should say it in every single video, stack to the rafters. Make sure you've got food and water for your family. You're taking care of your pets. You're covering security, and you're doing your best to become more self-sufficient. But I think with that, I've been rambling on long enough. So if you enjoy these videos, leave a like. If you got any questions, leave them down in the comment section down below. If you enjoy what we're doing with the channel, hit the subscribe button. And lastly, share the video with your friends and family because it definitely helps out. And with that, catch you in the next one.